Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a really intense and powerful story from the Old Testament, one that serves as a massive cautionary tale for anyone in a position of leadership, whether that's in a family, a church, or a community. We're talking about the judgment on the house of Eli. If you've ever read the book of 1 Samuel, you know this is a pivotal moment, a real turning point in Israel's history. It's a story about family, failure, and the serious consequences of turning a blind eye to wrongdoing. To really get the picture, we need to understand who Eli was. He wasn't just some guy. He was the high priest of Israel. He was the spiritual leader of the entire nation, the main link between the people and God. He served at the tabernacle in Shiloh, which was the central place of worship before the temple was built. Basically, he held one of the most important and respected positions you could have. People looked to him for guidance, for wisdom, and for intercession. He was also a judge, which means he had a huge amount of authority. But with great power comes great responsibility, and that's where our story starts to take a dark turn. Eli had 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, who were also priests serving with him. Now, you'd think the sons of the high priest would be model citizens, right? Well, not these 2. The Bible describes them as scoundrels who had no regard for the Lord. That's a pretty strong statement. They were corrupt to the core. For example, when people would bring their sacrifices to the tabernacle, Hophni and Phinehas would abuse their priestly authority. They would stick a fork into the pot where the sacrificial meat was boiling and take whatever came out for themselves, which was totally against God's law. They were supposed to get a specific portion, but they were greedy and took the best parts for themselves, even before the fat was burned on the altar as God's portion. This was a huge act of disrespect, not just to the people, but to God himself. They were essentially treating the holy offerings with contempt, and it didn't stop there. They also committed immoral acts with the women who served at the entrance to the tabernacle. They were turning the house of God into a place of corruption and sin. Now, here's the critical part. Eli knew about all of this. The whole of Israel was talking about his son's terrible behavior. Eli was an old man by this point, and he did confront them. He said, "Why do you do such things? I hear from all the people about your wicked deeds." But that's pretty much where it ended. He gave them a verbal slap on the wrist, a gentle rebuke, when what was needed was decisive, firm action. He was their father, but he was also the high priest. He had the authority to remove them from their priestly duties, to discipline them severely, to stop them from desecrating God's holy place, but he didn't. He honored his sons more than he honored God. He failed to restrain them, and this failure to act, this passive acceptance of sin in his own house, is what sealed his family's fate. He chose family ties over his duty to God, and that was a disastrous mistake. Because of this, God sent a prophet, an unnamed man of God, to deliver a devastating message to Eli. This was the first major warning. The prophet reminded Eli of how God had chosen his ancestor, Aaron, to be the first priest and had blessed his family line for generations. But now, that was all about to change. God's message was chilling. "Those who honor me I will honor, but those who despise me will be disdained." God declared that the priestly line of Eli's house would be cut off. His descendants would die young, and none of his family would live to an old age. And as a sign, God told him that both of his sons, Hophni and Phinehas, would die on the same day. Can you imagine hearing that? A complete and total judgment on your entire family line because you failed to deal with the sin right under your nose. This story really hammers home the importance of accountability, especially in leadership. Eli's failure wasn't just a private family matter. His sons' actions were corrupting the entire nation's worship. People were coming to the tabernacle to connect with God, and instead, they were met with greed and exploitation from the very priests who were supposed to be guiding them. It undermined the people's faith. God's judgment wasn't just about punishing Eli, it was about protecting the holiness and integrity of his community. He is a God of justice, and he will not allow his house to be defiled indefinitely. This prophetic warning was a clear signal that leadership is not a birthright you can abuse. It's a sacred trust, and when that trust is broken, there are severe consequences. But even in this story of judgment, we see a glimmer of hope and a powerful testament to God's sovereignty. Right in the middle of delivering this harsh verdict, God makes a promise. He says, "I will raise up for myself a faithful priest, who will do according to what is in my heart and my mind. I will firmly establish his priestly house, and he will minister before my anointed one always." Even when human leaders fail spectacularly, God's plan doesn't fail. He is always in control. He was already preparing to replace the corrupt system with something new, something faithful. This points forward to Samuel, who was growing up in the temple under Eli's care, and ultimately, it points to the ultimate faithful high priest, Jesus Christ. It shows us that no amount of human corruption can derail God's purposes. He will always raise up faithful leaders to carry out his will. It's a reminder that our hope isn't in human systems or family lines, but in God's faithfulness. The story of Eli's family becomes a powerful, cautionary legacy. It's a lesson passed down through generations about our spiritual responsibilities. It's not enough to just personally believe the right things. We are also responsible for the environment we create and the sin we tolerate, especially within our own spheres of influence. For parents, for pastors, for any kind of leader. Eli's story is a sobering reminder that passivity in the face of sin is not neutral. It's a form of participation. It shows that God's commitment to holiness is absolute. He wants his people, and especially his leaders, to reflect his character. When they don't, he will act to purify his community. It's not about being a perfect, sinless leader. No one is. But it's about taking sin seriously and dealing with it decisively, rather than making excuses or looking the other way. Eli's legacy is a stark warning. Don't take your spiritual responsibilities lightly. The judgment on Eli's house didn't just affect his immediate family. It had ripple effects that were felt for generations. One of the most tragic outcomes is connected to the priestly city of Nob. After Eli and his sons died, the high priesthood eventually passed to another branch of the family, Eli's descendants. Generations later, during the reign of King Saul, the city of Nob was a bustling center for priests. The high priest at the time was a man named Ahimelech, a descendant of Eli. When David was on the run from a paranoid and murderous King Saul, he came to Nob seeking help. Ahimelech, unaware of the conflict between David and Saul, gave David food and the sword of Goliath. When Saul found out, his rage was uncontrollable. He ordered the massacre of all the priests in Nob. The Bible records that 85 priests were killed that day, and the entire city, men, women, children, and even their livestock, was wiped out. Only one of Ahimelech's sons, Abiathar, managed to escape and join David. This horrific event is a direct fulfillment of the prophecy given to Eli decades earlier. It shows how the consequences of one person's failure can cascade down through their family line. The destruction of Nob is a brutal and devastating example of how divine judgment plays out in history. It connects the dots between personal accountability and communal consequences. Ahimelech and the other priests at Nob were, by all accounts, innocent of any real wrongdoing in their interaction with David. They were victims of Saul's madness. Yet, they were part of the family line that had been judged by God. Their fate was intertwined with the sin of their ancestors, Hophni and Phinehas, and the failure of their great-great-grandfather, Eli. This is a difficult part of the story to process, but it underscores the seriousness with which God views the covenant and the responsibilities of his chosen leaders. The fate of Nob serves as a chilling illustration of the long reach of sin and the comprehensive nature of God's justice. So, what can we take away from this heavy story today? First, it's a call to personal integrity. We need to constantly examine our own hearts and lives, especially if we are in any position of influence. Are we honoring God with our actions, or are we secretly cutting corners and hoping no one notices? Second, it's a challenge to take a stand against sin. It's not always popular or easy, but we can't be like Eli, who saw wrong and just gave a weak verbal protest. We must be willing to have difficult conversations and take decisive action to uphold righteousness in our homes, churches, and communities. And finally, it's a reminder to put our ultimate hope in God, not in people. Human leaders will fail, but God's plan will never be thwarted. He is always working to bring about his perfect will, raising up faithful servants and working all things for his glory. The story of Eli is a dark one, but it makes the light of God's faithfulness and his ultimate plan of redemption shine even brighter. Thanks so much for watching and for digging into this with me. I know it's a lot to think about. What are your thoughts on Eli's story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the stories of the Bible. See you in the next video, and God bless.